What up, y'all? It's your man, Abuamerican. I am here with ZUBY. Good sir.
How's it going,
Hello.
bro? How you doing?
Man, I am doing well. I'm very happy to have you on the show. This is something I've been looking forward to for quite some time. And thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, no
Dude,
worries, man. It's a pleasure.
I wanted to have you on back when like the drag hour story thing was going on. I mean, that's like not even news anymore, right?
Oh man, they're starting it up again now that now that the coronavirus is waning. They're starting that up again, at least here in the UK.
Do we even want to talk about that? I don't even know. I didn't even.
It shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't be a thing for us to talk about. It really shouldn't be a thing.
It's sad, isn't it? It's kind of sad and scary at the same time. I mean, I don't know. You got to help me out here because I mean, but you grew up in a conservative culture also. I mean, you kind of, if I understand correctly, and I know your story correctly, you grew up in Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah, and my parents are both originally from Nigeria.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, you spent quite a bit of time in a conservative, environments. I grew up in a military household, and we were quite conservative. My grandfather was a preacher. And although my father wasn't very religious, my mother was Roman Catholic and religious. So my house was quite conservative. So to me, when I look at stuff like Drag Story Hour, I kind of see that like a personal, like sexual type of orientation almost. And I don't know, would you agree with that? My assessment of that, or I mean, how would you do that?
Well, I mean, drag in itself is a sexualized thing. Like drag is supposed to be a form of adult entertainment. Right? Yeah. Like drag shows, drag queens, etc. That's a form of adult entertainment. And so my issue with it isn't like, like even within a liberal country, my issue with it isn't the fact that, like these are drag queens or whatever. It's like, okay, that's, if people are 18 and up and they want to, that's their thing, whatever. But like, this is children. We're talking about like 3-year-olds, 5-year-old, like why is this a thing, right? If the goal, like, what's the goal here? If you just want to have, story time for children, cool, right? You can have story time. Why specifically do you want to mix this up with drag queens? Why do you want drag queens reading to your kids? Why are they hosting this? But then what's going on in the mind of these parents who are like, yeah, I've got a 5-year-old. I want to take them to go see a drag queen and read the story. It's like, it's just like, what's up with that? What's going on in society and culture where I'm supposed to look at that and be like, oh yeah, that's good. This is totally normal. It's like, no, it's not. We already know that. And, some of the drag queens involved in this thing, a couple of ones in the US I know have already been exposed as being sexual predators, which shouldn't really surprise someone because why would they want to be doing that? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, the whole thing's just weird. Yeah. The whole thing's very weird.
I mean, obviously I'm Muslim. I think you know that. I mean, but if I was a more liberal, like not follow the rules type, I'd probably start me like an OnlyFans children reading hour.
And dude, I'd say the same thing if it was like if they had like porn star reading or hour or something. Yeah. I'd feel the same way. It's not the fact that people can have their own feelings about those things themselves, but it's different for adults. But if it's like for children. And, you have like porn stars coming in, like dressed all like, makeup and heels, like and they're sitting there reading to children. And you'd be kind of like, wait, this is not for kids. Like, this isn't for kids. You can, if the goal is to educate them and to, entertain them or whatever, look, we've been going as society for millennia without this being necessary. And it's been totally fine. I was raised without that. You were raised without that. We turned out okay. Like, we weren't like, what we needed was drag queen story hour. So yeah, it's very, very suspect.
That was a missing puzzle piece in society, the drag.
That's why we ended up conservative.
Yeah, right. Maybe. I have to wonder though. I mean, I've thought about this. Well, I mean, you actually asked the question, but I'm not sure if you have any answers. What would be the motivation behind this? I mean, I really sit sometimes because I have children. I have 9 children. Okay, some of them are adults, but I have 9 children. So I sit here sometimes at night and I'm just like, what is going on, and why?
Yeah.
I still haven't come up with a conclusion. Do you have any idea, what would be your...
For this thing in particular?
Yeah.
Look, man, I think that there is an agenda to remove the innocence of children, and there is an agenda to somewhat normalize pedophilia. I'm not saying this is like at the moment some like mainstream thing or that the average liberal or average progressive is on board with that,
Yeah,
but there is a fringe movement within that thing that's trying to sort of designate pedophilia as just another type of sexual orientation.
I've
I don't know
seen
how
it.
much of that you've seen, right? That's a real
I see
thing,
quite a bit.
you
I
know,
keep up
and
with
they're, yeah, and they have, these like drag kid shows on TV now, and they've got like, I've seen articles written in some fairly reputable blogs and papers talking about how, you know, pedophiles can't help it, right? They're kind of born, the whole born this way argument, right? They're trying to use the same argument that they've used for like, homosexuals or for transgender people. And they're sort of trying to apply that same logic and just say, well, you know, this is just how they are. And so, I mean, even on Twitter, you've got like there are pedophiles on Twitter,
Yeah, I've
right?
seen.
They call themselves MAPs, right? MAP, minor attracted person, and they're on Twitter, like, and some of them will literally put it in their bio and stuff. And Twitter doesn't even have an issue with it, right? As long as they're
They
not
don't bat
talking
an
about
eye.
anything illegal,
Yeah.
then it's totally fine. And so I'm just like, this is one of the problems with sort of unchecked liberalism is that people don't know where the borders are. Like I think you need I think the healthy balance between sort of liberalism and conservatism
Uh-huh.
is, both metaphorically and literally, conservatives tend to be in favor of borders and boundaries, right?
Mm.
Whereas people who are more liberal or more progressive always want to change them and expand them or even remove them. And sometimes that's what's necessary, depending on where a society and a culture is.
Yeah.
But sometimes, boundaries and borders sometimes exist for a reason.
They serve a very good
So
purpose.
if you're going to move a border or you're going to question something that is sort of the norm, then you need to be very, very careful about what you're doing and what that next thing sort of leads to. And
Yeah.
I think we've kind of got into a place where things have just kind of gone too far in one direction, and it needs to kind of come back to a healthy medium. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Oh man. Well said, sir. Well said. Yeah, thank you. I want to get your take on that for quite some time. We're discussing outdated stuff now, but well, actually, no, it's not. It's coming
It's
back. Like
not. Yeah.
we were talking about that, it's coming back. Which brings us to modern times. No, you know what? No, I want to cover something else, man. I just want to salute you, my good sir. You are the only person I've seen on Twitter that managed to get banned for something very simple. Okay, dude. And then come back and profit off of it, top it off.
Oh, dude. Yeah,
That
man.
was that was a masterful move. I have to
Oh,
salute you
thank
on
you. Thank you. Yeah, the OK Dude T-shirts and the hats they've been selling well. Sold almost 500 now, so it's going
wow,
well. Yeah.
man. Oh gosh, if I was the jealous type of guy, I'd be jealous. I'm happy for you, man. That
Thank
that's
you.
that that's well deserved money.
Yeah, I got a new song out of it. Got a new music video, and it's sort of a catchphrase now. So yeah, thank you. I'm grateful in the end for what happened.
Yeah, I use it every once in a while, to be honest. I should
Yeah,
try.
yeah. It just works, doesn't it? Right?
It really does.
When someone's just saying something crazy, okay, dude.
Okay,
Okay,
dude.
I'm not going to debate you. I'm not going to fight you. Just okay.
Yeah. So let me ask you about something that we both have to deal with, being a conservative of color.
Mm.
How does that work for you in the UK? I know the UK tends to be more like center left. Well, would that be correct? I don't know if that's a correct assertion. I mean,
I
I
think
was in
so.
London when I was there, so
Mm.
London is definitely like a very left leaning city. And so, when I was there for a short while, I was there for 16 months. I really struggled socially,
That's
because
interesting.
yeah, I was a conservative guy, even amongst Muslims, because Muslims tend to, for some reason, London Muslims in specific, they tend to hang out with, and well, not hang out with, that's the wrong term, but they tend to side with and identify with the left.
Hmm.
So I found that quite problematic, and I was very closed off, except for a very small circle of individuals. How does that work for you? You know, is it
Yeah.
is it different or?
I mean, dude, for me, like I'm very open minded. Like in a lot of ways, I am more liberal than a lot of people who call themselves liberal.
Okay.
You know, like I'm very live and let live. I'm very live and let live, especially when it comes to sort of like, you know, laws and legislation, et cetera. Like I'm constantly the past few weeks, right? I keep getting in these battles with people online about like mask mandates and stuff because people are trying to force, people think the government should force everybody to wear a mask or they should force people to, and I'm like, no. Like my position is actually the more liberal one, right? It's considered conservative, but if you think about what the word is supposed to mean, I'm like, no, people should have the individual choice to make that decision. I'm not interested in like, you know, from the top down telling, you know, the government forcing this and, you know, using the police to enforce it. And, you know, I'm not interested in the police arresting someone because they're not wearing a friggin' mask. Like that's dumb. You know, like it's silly, right? There's real problems going on, right? I want the police to arrest people who are stabbing people or shooting people or raping people or you know, robbing people. But someone goes out without a mask in an area where there's, you know, the thing's not even a big, it's like, whatever, man. You know, people can make that choice. If you want to stay away from that person, you can stay away from that person, right? If they start chasing you and trying to cough on you, then okay, the police can intervene, right? Because that's probably some type of assault or harassment. But you know, if someone's just there trying to buy some bananas in the store, or trying to, you know, buy a magazine, and you want to start like harassing them because it's just silly, you know? It's just this human desire to want to control people. So I mean, with me, like I get on, you know, certainly in the day to day life, like stuff is just cool, stuff is calm, stuff's just fine. You know, I don't bother people. People don't bother me. I do my thing. I enjoy my life. I do all the things that I love. And, you know, and I love hearing different views and different perspectives and things like that. And it doesn't mean I need to agree with everybody. There's you know, we all disagree on stuff, but you know, we agree on things, we disagree on things. And I'm just open-minded and I'm happy to have my mind changed, right? If I'm totally wrong on something, and someone can give me like a comprehensive argument or reason or show me some facts or some, and then I'm like, okay, you know, I will change my position, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's something that's just sort of like a very strong principle, then sure, it's going to be quite hard to get me to change on that. But if it's something that's factual, then and I'm getting something factually incorrect, I'm not gonna dig in on that. And so yeah, no, I think that sort of approach, I think, yeah, it helps me to be able to kind of get on with pretty much anybody. I think online, especially on Twitter, it can look like I'm constantly embroiled in certain sort of battles and stuff, but that's just a lot of that is just due to the reach, right? I mean, my Twitter hits, you know, 100 million people a month, which is like insane. So when you've got that many people, yeah, that's my Twitter impressions.
Wow.
Yeah, 100 million a month. So you're gonna, you know, when that many people are seeing anything, you're gonna get disagreement, you're gonna get conflict, you're gonna get misunderstanding, you're gonna get like all kinds of stuff. And a lot of people are dumb too, right? A lot of people are just not smart. So I know you're not supposed to say that, but a lot of people are dumb. You know, there's 300 million people on Twitter, and not everybody is smart. All right, you got the whole spectrum on there. So some things, sure, sometimes someone misunderstands, but sometimes someone's just not clued up enough to even get what is being said, right? Yeah. If I say, I'm using this mask thing just because we were talking about it today, but if I say that I don't believe that the government should mandate masks, someone will respond, why are you anti-mask? Right? They don't see the difference between me saying, look, I don't think that this should be like a government legislated thing versus me saying, don't wear a mask. Like I've never, ever told anybody not to wear a mask. I'm just saying, I don't think the government should force that. I don't think they should put in a law saying that if you're going to go outside your house, you should have to. No, like and again, this is funny because like that's actually, by proper definitions, that's actually quite a liberal sort of idea, right? It's certainly a very libertarian idea. Like I'm not interested. Like I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I don't even cuss, right? But I'm not trying to create legislation that says that everyone else has to abide by that. You see what I mean? Like that's the difference. So I am opposed to drugs, right? I'm opposed to drugs, and I generally think like drinking alcohol, certainly in excess, I think it's a bad idea. I don't think it's good. It's bad for your health. We know this. Smoking is bad for you. We know this.
Absolutely.
Do I want to ban tobacco? Do I want to ban? No. If we're in the UK. If you're in the UK, if you're in America, etc., you have to accept that freedoms and liberty come with the ability for people to make bad choices. And I'm always encouraging people to make good choices, but I can't just use the government to do everything that I personally, just just beat people into some, and there's places where that's how they do it. But I think that's not the approach that I think you should be applying in these countries.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually heard that tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, masks are mandated in the UK when you go shopping. Like
Today.
Shopping center.
Started today. Yeah, today.
Yeah, we've been on that since we opened up. We opened up in Germany quite a while ago. And I got my mask here. I got my little Lysol.
Okay, yeah.
I go into the stores, but really it's a joke. Because these masks don't really protect against anything. I could literally go into like a store with there was a guy on Twitter, he had a screen mask on. Literally, it was just a screen. It was like, one of those bug net screens.
Yeah.
And they were fine with it.
Yeah.
And I'm quite sure if I did the same thing here in Germany, they'd be fine with it, which kind of brings into question the entire concept as to why we're doing this.
No, there's a lot of questions. And look, what about the timing? It's almost end of July, right? We've well past the peak. Like if they were saying this back, if in, February, March or whatever, they were like, oh crap, like this thing's, that would have at least made more coherent sense. But then in March, I think they told us literally information from the CDC and from various governments. They literally said, don't wear masks. There's no evidence that masks work. Even Dr. Fauci in the US, the guy who everyone's like, listen to Dr. Fauci, he said there is no evidence that masks work. He said, don't buy masks, etc. And then 2-3 months later, like the amount of hypocrisies and the amount of goalpost moving, etc. You can't blame people. You can't blame people for being skeptical. Yeah. You can't blame people for being skeptical. And look, I think if someone, like if you're coughing and you're sneezing and you're not, and you're spraying out droplets, yeah, sure. I think wearing a mask is like good courtesy for people, right? Probably stay home. But if you have to go out, wear a mask and don't be, spraying your stuff on people, sure. But if I'm just if I'm going shopping, firstly, I don't, as far as I don't have the virus. And if I'm going out shopping and I'm not talking to people and I'm just like breathing in and out of my nose, like just normal and chill, and I'm social distancing, someone needs to explain to me how it goes from that to me killing their grandma, because it doesn't even make sense, right? I'm the one who's thinking about rationale. I'm thinking about science. I know how the thing spreads. And we've been taking precautions for months now to avoid this. So after all of that, it's crazy. So yesterday, the whole past 6 months, I've been able to go to all these shops, go to the post office without a mask. As of today, as of 9:00 this morning, I must wear the mask. Right? Like, how does that even make sense? If the thing made sense, you would have just said, okay, from tomorrow, you have to wear the mask. They gave us like 2 weeks notice, right? which is nice to have the update. But I'm like, well, if it's that important, you're not going to, on July. Exactly. On July 10, you're not going to be like, okay, on July 24th, you have to wear the mask. It's like, no, why would you have that? The whole thing doesn't make sense. It's not logical. It's not rational. And that's why I just the whole thing's just annoying to me.
Germany actually admitted it. The government admitted it. They said that it really doesn't make sense, that there was an overreaction, but they're still carrying on with the same, program of like masks and this and that and whatever else. And they're saying there's been a massive, that's the official government position, that there's been a massive overreaction.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, no.
At least they admit it.
Yeah. Well, it took them a while, this was like, they said this a couple of weeks ago also. No, it was about a month and a half ago. And they were really upset at the economic fallout that it's had. They were really looking at it closely. They were looking at places like Sweden and a few other places that didn't have lockdown. And they were looking at their numbers and their figures, and they were like, what the heck, man? So it's just been it's been just madness. But you were saying, actually, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was saying, but you were actually saying that you actually knew of like people who died from the virus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's I've only heard about 6 people at my previous company before they shut down for the year that caught it. Okay. But nobody actually died.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting to hear.
Yeah, I mean, this is with one exception. I know one person in his 40s who died of it. He did have some pre-existing conditions. The people though I know who have died, I think, as far as I know, I think all in their 80s or above. So obviously that's not good. But there comes a time in our life where the older and older people get, then the more that a flu, there comes a time where just catching the normal flu is very dangerous, right? Or even catching a cold can be dangerous, right? If you're 100 years old, if you're 90 years old, a virus that you or I would just sort of shake off, and maybe we'll feel bad for about three days, that can put your life at serious risk. So I think one of the big silver linings that no one really even talks about with this whole situation is that this doesn't kill children. Right? Yeah. That's like a huge silver lining. Like one of the weirdest things with the whole pandemic is that the approach to everything on every level has been very one size fits all. Like people aren't paying attention to like age, location, sort of all there are so many different factors, right? People are acting as if a 25-year-old is at the same risk as an 85-year-old. And so we should apply the exact same policy and treat it the same way. People are acting like being in New York City or being in London is the same as being in Saarland or being in, Southampton. It's like, no, this is silly. These places need different approaches. If you've got one place where like it's spiking and you've got people living on top of each other in apartments, et cetera, you might need to be more strict. But then if you've got somewhere where like, there's been 3 deaths, all of people who are like 90, and people are already quite socially distanced, and there's all that, then shutting down the economy and putting people out of work and closing all, it doesn't make sense. And it's like no one wants to, because it's been so politicized, and then you've got all the social factors of people wanting to look like good citizens, which I understand, but it just turns into this the whole thing just becomes really, really silly. And you see it because
it's
especially
really
with, what was that?
I said it's become politicized, really.
Oh, good grief. Yeah, totally. I mean, and that's dangerous too, man, because it means people make bad decisions because people aren't making, so in the US, for example, people want, because it's an election year and you have a lot of people who hate the president, people don't want him to, it's almost like there's some people I'm sure they would not say this out loud, but I feel like there are some people who probably they don't want him to deal with the situation well. They don't want this thing to end because if it reflects well on Trump, it might get him reelected. Like they care more about getting him out of office than they care about doing what is best overall for the country, whether that's economically or that's health or a combination, etc. And that's a terrible situation. If you see what's been going on, the protests and the demonstrations and all of this stuff, like, I mean, the U.S. is just it's always an interesting place because it's just so, everything's so amplified and crazy. Really but it's just like everything is just so politicized. The whole, defund the police, abolish, like that wasn't even on the rate. Who tell me 2 months ago, let's say 10 weeks ago, who was even considering defunding the police? Right? It wasn't even on the radar. Like this whole idea just popped up 2 months ago, and now people are talking about it serious. And I'm like, this is a crazy idea. What do you mean defund the police, abolish? Like what a terrible idea. Like
working out in Chaz zone, right?
Dude, it's nuts.
Yeah. And that brings us to the next topic. 2 black men. Do our lives matter?
I think, I believe so.
The whole protest and everything that's going on in America. You're like, hey man, what did you say? That whole thing is going on over there. What, dude? Give me your take on that, man. Was it George Floyd or is it something else going on here?
I think George Floyd was. Firstly, the George Floyd situation was terrible. I put out a whole video about it. I was talking about the George Floyd situation before it was popular, right? Before it started trending. And as soon as I saw that video, I started talking about it. I put out a YouTube video, got over 50,000 views. I was talking about it from the bat. I said, this guy was murdered. And then the thing just got hijacked. And we're now at a stage a couple months later where, you know, 90% of the stuff going on has absolutely nothing to do with George Floyd. Lots of it has nothing to do with Black lives, has nothing to do with, it's just nonsense, right? You've just got people who are like Marxists who just want to, you know, you've got these Antifa goons and they just want to, you know, you've got people setting up autonomous zones and ripping down statues. And then you've got people, you know, canceling Aunt Jemima pancake syrup and Uncle Ben's. Like, it's like, wait, what's even going on here, right? Like, what does this, what is this? How does this save anyone's life? Where's all this money going to, right? Black Lives Matter is collecting tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. What have they done?
Yeah.
What have they done to it? What have they done to help save or protect Black lives? What's like beyond people's feelings? What have been the tangible results where you can say, okay, we put in this policy and it resulted in this positive change? As far as I've seen, more Black people have now died because of this whole situation. More Black people have lost their jobs, lost their businesses, been harmed, and more will be, because as police withdraw from certain cities and communities, the murder rate goes up, the crime rate goes up, etc. And I'm just looking at this whole thing like, look, you can yell Black Lives Matter all you want, but if you're putting in policies and on the ground what is happening is negative as far as I can see, and horrifically negative in some cases, then I don't believe you. Like, I don't care what hashtag you put up. I don't care if you put a black square on your Instagram. I don't care what corporate statement you put out. If your policy is harming the people that you claim to be trying to help, let alone creating hostility and division amongst people outside of this group. I mean, I put up a poll on Twitter yesterday that, 30-something thousand people responded to. I said, in 2020, do you think that race relations have gotten better, worse, or stayed the same? Over 80% people said gotten worse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Over 80% of people. And so that's not good.
No.
Right? Like that's not good. And people are just seeing all these crazy videos coming out. I mean, you're seeing gun sales rocketing, gun sales going up in the States. Like, people are freaking out. And I'm like, this is not a good thing, right? It's not healthy.
I consider myself somewhat of a visionary and a sage. And when the Rona started off, I started buying weapons. Everybody was stockpiling toilet paper, and I started buying crossbows and this. And everybody's like, "I'm American, you're nuts." Yeah, and here we are. Okay, I'm not seeing any turmoil. Excuse me, in Thailand, but I didn't see this going well. I was like, this is just going to be a springboard to something else. Sure enough, here we are with. This is another thing. You made a good point that Black Lives Matter is collecting tens of millions of dollars. And I mean, if they really wanted to affect change, they would make a pretty solid lobby group. They could take that money and they could actually, because the American government is basically semi-run by lobbies, and interest groups that have a lot of money. They could really affect change if they wanted to with that money. But as you said, it disappears, and most we see them doing is, buying a couple cans of yellow paint and then, painting BLM,
painting the street,
and then where's the other, couple of $100 million that they spent $15 on some cans of paint?
I believe they've raised over $1 billion.
Holy!
I think they've raised over $1 billion.
I'm in the wrong business, man.
Yeah, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure over the course since they started, I think they've raised over $1 billion.
If I switch to Black Lives Matter activist one day and just start cashing money, don't blame me. Don't hate me, please. I'm in the wrong business.
Look, man, if you gave me as an individual $1 billion, even if you gave me $100 million, I will make more of a difference for Black Americans than this whole movement and organization has. Even if it's just like straight up just building a couple things or investing in a few businesses or whatever. And look, the thing is as well, look, the movement is called Black Lives Matter. The police are not a remotely big threat to black Americans, right? I don't care about people's feelings and anecdotes, right? If you look at stats, if you look at facts and figures, we know that over 7,000 Black Americans were murdered by other Black Americans in 2019.
They're not ready for that conversation. 15 unarmed Black people were killed by police. And that doesn't even mean, and in most of those cases, those were justified shootings, right? Yep.
So, but even if we take that raw number, 15, 7,000, 15, 7,000. Which one of these should we focus on, right? If the goal is to save lives, you know, how many children have been gunned down in the past 2 months? I keep seeing photos of like little kids like popping up, like this kid was shot, this kid was killed, this kid was killed. And I'm just like, good freaking grief, man. Where's the outrage on this? Like, it's amazing.
They're not ready for that conversation. There's a lot of conversations that African Americans are not ready to have. I mean, when we come back to stats, I mean, statistically, the most dangerous place for an African American is in his mother's womb. The abortion rate in the African American community is ridiculously high. I mean, we're not going to look at that.
About 35%, something like that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how many African American children are aborted.
Yeah,
Black Lives Matter, okay, but if they're in the womb, they're not. Apparently, those lives don't matter.
Yeah, the whole thing is frustrating, man, because it's really people. Do you know what I've really learned is how effective slogans are, right? It's like if you have a nice sounding slogan, you can be as hypocritical, inconsistent, like actually like directly harmful to the cause, etc. Like as long as you give it a nice name and a good hashtag, like people just go with it. You know, people just go with it. And this is the thing. I mean, look, I put up a post like early on in this thing. I put up a post. I've been critical of the Black Lives Matter organization for years because I looked into them years ago. And when it started getting hyped up and I saw people in companies, making all these donations to them or whatever, I posted a tweet about how I do not support Black Lives Matter as the organization. And of everything I've ever tweeted in the 11 years I've been on Twitter, I have never received so much flack as that. And I'm talking like going outside of the Twitter world, like like in my personal life, like this got into my personal life, my private. Yeah, I'm like that went down like man. People were not pleased with me saying that, and it's been interesting because over the past couple weeks, of course, no one will give this to me, but over the past couple weeks, you've seen more and more people, including a lot of prominent Black people, including a lot of Black Americans, saying, okay, this organization is not what it says on the tin, right? And now people are having those conversations, or people are saying, I was like, man, I just said it too early, right? I said it before the public consciousness had sort of snapped into that. So people sort of perceive this as, oh, ZUBY doesn't care about Black people. ZUBY is supporting white supremacy. ZUBY wants Black people. And it's like, are you serious? Like, look on their website, read where their aims. We want to dismantle the Western prescribed nuclear family. We want to, on the BLM UK, we want to disrupt, we want to dismantle capitalism. We want to,
family structures.
Yes, exactly. We want to empower, like it's got all this weird, like loads of LGBT stuff, which in itself, like, that's the thing, but it's like, what's that got to do with Black lives? If you're calling your movement Black Lives Matter and you're now talking about like queer people and trans people and all of this and all, I'm like, what does this have to do with what you're calling the movement? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it really has nothing to do.
And then the whole defund the police thing.
Yeah, I had a video banned, actually. It was almost 4 years old. And I went down their website. It's about 3.5 years old. I went down the website and I came from a Muslim perspective because I saw a lot of Muslims, Black American Muslims. It was back in my Facebook time before I came to Twitter. And they were really supporting Black Lives Matter. And I just went down there and I was just like, how as a Muslim are you supporting an organization that's pushing, the LGBT type movement? It's just ethically and religiously, it's not something that we could be a part of. If they want to live their lives like that, okay, fine, do that. But as a Muslim, this is really problematic for you to be really pushing their agenda and whatnot. So, I've been on this for a while. And they actually took that
interesting.
Video. I got flagged, and I got a strike against my account. It was years ago for that video. I made a new one recently on OG Logic. I'm in a show that's weekly with OG Logic.
Okay.
Defunding the police.
Jeez.
Is that a good idea? What do you think?
It's literally one of the worst ideas. Like, if your goal is for more Black people to die, then it's a good idea.
I mean, I got weapons.
Literally.
I got weapons. They can defund the police. But for everybody else?
Honestly, like, I feel like I'm dealing with children a lot of the time, man.
I think you are, man.
I mean, yesterday I saw a tweet from, it was just some random person. So I didn't even bother replying because I didn't want to sort of. I have like I have to kind of be careful with how I wield my power on Twitter these days. So
Okay.
like I'm careful to like because if I quote tweet someone who's just kind of like a random person, then they might end up with like 1,000 responses, which is sort of overkill. It's not really what I want. So I
Yeah.
saw someone. It was a black woman in America, and she said something like, "Y'all need to, y'all need to give up on the idea of the nuclear family. This will not advance black people," or something like that. And then another person replied talking about how the nuclear family is a tool of white supremacy. And I'm just like, oh my, like what is like what do I even where do I even begin with that? Right? And it's crazy because people are literally saying and promoting ideas, whether this is disrupt the nuclear family or this is defund the police. These are things that like I'm not even a black American. And I'm
Yeah.
like, these are things that will harm black Americans, right? Like we know one of the biggest problems amongst that demographic is fatherless homes, single motherhood, boys and girls growing up without fathers and fatherly presence. We know that's a big problem. So if you're there pushing the idea that we
Yeah.
need you need less nuclear families and you need more single, I'm just like that is insane, right? People are living in societies where the crime rate is high. There's too many homicides. People are, robbing, raping, stealing, killing, normally within their own racial demographic because that's who's close to each other, et cetera. And you want to withdraw the police from those places? You want to withdraw the police? I'm just like, what kind of
It's a special kind.
it's like so crazy. It's there are issues where it's like, okay, I can get both sides and it's not clear cut, but with some things it's just like no, you can see the chain of dominoes, and then it's like, okay, I want to push this domino, and I'm like, if you push that domino, that one will fall, right? And it's like people don't even. It's like, no, but I want to knock down this domino. It's like, well, if you knock down that one, all of them will fall. I literally had someone tell me, because this is a few weeks ago, I was talking about how stupid the defund the police idea was, and someone said, well, if there's someone's I think I was even talking about abolishing the police. And someone said, oh, but if we abolish the police, then there's no police brutality. And I'm like, technically that is correct. But if the goal is to, protect people and save black lives, then, this is like saying, oh, good grief. I don't know. This is like saying like we should ban water so that there's no drowning.
Yeah, I
Right.
got nothing. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
like
usually something cheeky
yeah.
to say, something, but that one
Yeah,
got.
yeah, like sometimes people drown. A couple thousand people drown every year. So we need to ban water. We need to just abolish water, and then nobody will drown. And it's like, well, technically that's right, but there's other impacts here. And look, I've had to come to the conclusion, especially with the amount of time I spend online, which is that some people are just dumb.
Yeah.
Some people are just dumb, and if someone is, there are some people. It's like you just can't. The logic doesn't work. Like there's no point engaging in the conversation or the discussion because they just can't understand. They can't think past phase one, right? They can't think of, okay, if you do phase one here, then this affects this and this affects this. They don't see that sort of chain of reaction, and they just see the very first step, and that causes people to make like really, really dumb decisions and say really, really dumb stuff.
I agree 100%. I say it, and I think people think I'm being insulting or offensive when I say it, but I actually say it. It's just basically, IQ matters, and we're seeing it with social media.
Oh gosh.
And giving the world a voice. And I don't consider myself to be like super brainiac man or anything, but I definitely can put together like logical conclusions, and I can like say if A happens, B is in all probability will come next. And if we abolish the police, crime will increase. So okay, you got rid of one. What takes its place? Nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, we all grew up with the statement. Well, nothing. What did they say? Something doesn't exist in a vacuum. I can't remember the saying, but nothing exists in a vacuum. Something is always going to replace what you take away. It's
exactly.
Just, so
and we've actually seen this even on even on an international level. Like if you're not talking about police, like we've seen what happens in power vacuums, right?
Yes.
What's been right? You've seen what happens. Okay, we're going to go and we're going to oust this leader in the Middle East, or we're going to go and we're going to disrupt this thing. And we literally see what happens, right? You get like these warlords rise up, and you get groups like, whether it's Al Qaeda or like ISIS or what, and they rise up and they take, and I'm like, that's slightly different, but that's even on a more complex scale than the police. Like, we know, like, there are bad people in society. Criminals exist in a society. If there were no criminals, you wouldn't need any guns. You wouldn't need any police. You wouldn't need lawyers. You wouldn't need courts. The whole legal system. You know what? If nobody broke the law, we don't need any of this. The only reason we need all of this is because some people break the law, and they're always going to do it. So if you are in a society, especially in a big city, you're going to have some aspect of criminality. And the best way to incentivize criminality is for there to be no repercussions for it. Right? So as soon as that happens, right, the police are withdrawing from a community, like the gangsters and the murderers and they're just like, oh wow,
we are the police.
There's not, there's nobody to arrest them. Even if they get arrested, there's nobody to charge. It's just, I don't know. It's literally one of the worst ideas I've ever heard.
Yeah, people can't. No, man, there's a word for it. I use German so much. But they can't make that connection. They can't associate that happened over there, that could possibly happen to us. They don't make that connection. No, that's those people over there. We take the leader out and everything goes crazy. We take the police out over here. Everybody's going to be like, flowers and fields and fences here,
Yeah.
And it's insanity. A solution to this. Now, I have a very controversial solution to this.
Oh, wow.
I want your take on it. Yeah, it's very controversial. So, coming back to the topic of fatherless homes, African-American families and whatnot, we know that from shortly after slavery in America, the African-American communities actually did quite well. They had intact families that were economically and financially doing very well. They were also segregated. And I think you see where I'm going with this. I think we should bring back a limited type of non-racist segregation and just be like, boom. This is our solution. And then basically what this does is it puts everybody in the hot seat. So now African Americans say, hey, if you leave us alone and you give us this stuff, I even say give them reparations. I'll take it. I took the Rona money. They actually sent it to me here in Germany. It's the craziest thing. I was expecting them to say no. I'll go ahead and take my reparations. So give them reparations, give them segregation, and then say, hey, you know what? If you can't get this right, man, don't come talk to us with any sort of crazy BS. Yeah. And so now it's like a zero position to give everybody an opportunity to do what they want to do. Non-racist segregation. What do you think? A bad idea or a good one?
I think it's a bad one.
Okay.
I think it's a bad one. I think it's a backward step rather than a forward step. I think the forward step would be to actually reach a stage where you don't even really use the term Black American and White American and Latino American, et cetera, right? Here in the UK, I don't know what it's like in Germany, but in the UK, it's rare to hear someone referred to as Black British or Asian British or White British. Like if it's on a census form or something, sure. But these terms are not generally used. People just say British. They don't say, oh, I'm African British or I'm this British or whatever. And I think that's actually quite important. And I think it's quite an interesting sign. I mean, in the US, I think I can understand why there are more sort of identity issues there, given some of the history of the US and everything. But I think actually the ideal would be to, rather than going that way you're saying and sort of taking that step back, but doing it in a way that is, look, I mean, I think 90 something percent of people are happy to live amongst everybody else, right? You've got friends, you've got family, you've got colleagues, etc., of all different races, ethnicities, whatever. And awesome, you can just have the best of you. That means you've got access to the best people, right? So, and the best brains and the best talents and everything like that. And so I think that on both sides of the argument, you'd kind of be losing some of that synergy and capability, because you're reducing the talent pool and you're sort of artificially limiting people. Just like when they did have like enforced segregation, And I mean, part of the reason they had to enforce it is because if you let capitalism do its job and you actually let the market kind of do its job, then
Mhm.
racism is actually it's actually really bad for business,
Yeah,
right?
I,
Like,
I agree with
like if you refuse to any kind of ism or phobia, it's actually bad for business, right? If you refuse to say you've got someone who's really talented and you refuse to hire them because of their skin color or their gender or whatever, and that's the best person for the job, then there'll be another business. Your competitor will hire them
you.
and they will wipe you out in the long term, etc. Like bigotry doesn't really pay off in that regard. So, I mean, so yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what. Like here's my amendment to the sort of radical idea. I think the people who want separatism, whether they're like the white nationalists or the black nationalists, like if they want to go off and sort of create their own thing and
Yeah,
like leave everybody else alone, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
that would be nice.
And I,
I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
think there's a lot of them, but if they want to go and do that, then they can see how it goes.
I'm just thinking for America what a solution is, because this is all
Yeah,
you hear. They just bang on about race. I mean, I think it's a very. I mean, race and ethnicity is always an issue no matter where you go around the world. I mean, people generally, the entire multiculturalism thing is a great big experiment anyway.
yeah,
Generally, people are used to living in homogenous societies, both ethnically and culturally. So now when we take these melting pots, when we throw people together, of course you're going to run into conflicts.
mm.
Me personally, it wouldn't work for me. I mean, I throw it out there as a radical idea. I throw it out there for America. But I mean, my grandfather's white. I
yeah,
don't have. I have 9 children. None of them are from a black person like myself. I mean, I
hmm,
have children from Asian women, Arab women. I have from a white woman. I don't have any. I'd be stuck. I'd be on the fence. I'd be that guy. Like I'd have my house right in the middle of the termination. You know what I'm saying? I'd find a way to profit.
yeah,
But so I mean, it's just a goofy idea. But America seems to like have something special. I think that's just because of its history,
mm,
with slavery and whatnot. I think in the United Kingdom it's very different because you guys had more of a class system,
yeah.
and so there was just you were either one of the royalty or you were under the bus and you were under a
Mm.
royal foot. So I don't think race and ethnicity plays like such a massive role there like it does
Yeah.
in the United States.
You know,
You know,
in the US, I think people just need to let things heal. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like like I said, I think the vast majority of people, I think the vast majority of people are like cool to live amongst each other and like get on and not make a big deal about sort of immutable characteristics, just like you don't make a big deal about people's height or their eye color or their hair color, etc. I think most people are already, it hasn't
yeah,
always been this way, but I think in 2020, most people are like, okay, cool. Like, people are
yeah,
different. We can all live amongst each other and not bash each other's heads in or whatever. And we can be respectful of each other's beliefs, whether that's religious or, ideological, what people look like, etc. Cool. Like, go to any big city. I mean, you can walk around New York, you can walk 99.99% of the time, stuff is fine, despite
yeah,
all the diversity and changes and stuff. I think what needs to happen is I think there's just a very small percentage of agitators who don't want the wound to heal, right? Imagine you've got a scab on you, you've got like a scar on your leg and you keep picking at it and it never
right,
heals because you keep doing that. And there are people who do that. And there's people whose job it is to do that. This includes
um,
politicians, this includes the media, this includes certain activists. This includes, it's part of why I don't like groups like BLM because I think that they are agitators. I don't think they're helping the healing, right? I think they're picking at
yeah,
the scab and they're forcing people to view the world through this racial lens, right? Because it's black, black, white, black. You're forcing people, whether they're black or they're white or they're Asian or Latino, you're forcing people to see in that way. And if someone says all lives matter, what happens? They get angry, right? And they want
yeah,
to start a fight over that, right? Despite the fact that everyone agrees. In terms of just the pure sentence and the meaning of the sentence, we all agree that Black Lives Matter. We all agree that white lives matter. We all
yeah,
agree that all lives matter. We all agree on the statement itself, but they've become so politically charged
yeah,
and whatever that when you see people having that fight, the Black Lives Matter versus all lives matter fight, it's like you both actually agree with the statement. You're just trying to use
yeah.
the statement as like a weapon. Do you see what I mean? And I
I do.
think that that's just the agitation. And it's like, look, if people just chilled out, just calm down, like breathe and think clearly and think, oh, actually, we're sort of on the, actually, we're on the same page here. You know what? I don't want to see I don't want to see black people dying. Oh, you know what? I don't want to see white people dying. Oh, I don't want to see anybody dying. Like, no, like we don't want to see the police kneeling on anybody's neck. We don't want to see the police shooting anybody who doesn't deserve to be shot. We're all in agreement, right? Like we're all in agreement here. So if people could kind of get out of the weeds and come up a level and realize, oh, actually, you know what? Like this person's not my enemy, right? This person's not like we actually agree here. We all agree that police brutality is wrong and bad, and we all agree that racism is bad, and we shouldn't like judge someone based on where their ancestors were from, like what they look like, etc. It's like that's a really we learn these lessons, right? We've been here before. Like we know this is a bad idea. Like let's not like do this again. Like we went through all of this, all the civil, people fought in the civil rights era, and there were all these fights and changes and whatever. And it's like, do you want to go through all that to just go like, you know what? Let's do segregation again. Let's just then we give up. We give up. Like just let's do it again.
I just want a final, just like look, we're gonna give you the shut up. You better work with this, and if you don't work with it, man, don't come back here talking crazy. Because their entire argument is like, we're always being oppressed by white people, this and the other. I'm in the whitest of countries that I can think of right now is Germany. Okay, well, there's a lot of foreigners here now, and I do well. So I'm like, here I am, a black guy, an extreme minority. You got a lot of Arabs and whatnot here, but black guys, we're still rare out here. Mm-hmm. I don't speak perfect German, yet I always end up in like, middle to, upper management administrative positions. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, how am I doing okay? And really out here, there's no severe political correctness. If anybody wants to throw me under a bus out here, because I'm a black guy, really nobody's going to be like, yeah, well, we're going to take your side and we're going to get you a lawyer and this, that, the other. Really, it's just going to be like, suck it up, Bucky. That's really how it's going to be. So, I mean, when I look at it, I mean, maybe it's a different environment. Maybe it's a different situation.
Yeah, but, I mean, it is. But look, people also need people. This is where it helps to have a global framing as well, right? Because I understand, look, there are issues everywhere. But America, like if you're American, period, you're privileged. Yeah. Right, on a global level, if you are an American, you have an American passport, and it's 2020, compared to 99% of people who have ever walked the earth, you are in an amazing position. The opportunities you have, right? And this is not to say that your life is perfect or that there's nothing wrong or nothing went bad historically, etc., or even goes wrong now, but I mean, even if you limit it to black people in the world, right? There's probably about 1 billion black people in the world. Vast majority, which will be in Africa. Yeah. Who are the richest black people in the world?
Americans, of course.
Yeah. Right. And by quite a large margin too, and not just the richest, but in terms of having opportunity to go up the ladder. So even if you started not in an amazing position, I mean, I'm sure like I know so many people. Not just black. I know people of all things who, started out not in a, at least within that society, started out, say, in the bottom quarter of that society, whether in the UK, they were in, council estates, or in the US, they were kind of in the hood, or, maybe like, single mothers situations, etc. And then, after like a decade of work, or some cases even, right, they're killing it. They're doing well. They're successful like that. And that opportunity is there, and they can keep moving up, and no one is gonna block them. No one is gonna come and say, you know what? Like, no, this is it. Like the buck stops here. You can't go any further. It's like, nah, you could become a millionaire. You could become a billionaire. You could become like, run a company. You could run multiple companies. The sky is the limit, and you've seen millions of people do it. So it's clearly possible, right? It's clearly possible. So I think a lot of people just need to get out of that victimology mindset and say, okay, you know what? Actually, let me reframe this, because there's two different ways you can look at your life, right? You can focus on the negative. You can think of all the things you have going against you, right? We all have things going against us, right? You could be, some people, maybe you could be taller, you could be better looking, you could be better at this, you could be better at that. Your parents could have been richer. You could have come from a better family. Hundreds of factors. But you know what? You could also be like, man, you know what? I've got huge advantages. Man, I'm in the UK. I've got a British passport. I'm smart. I have got a good, like, whatever the things you have working. Are you just able-bodied? There are people who are blind. There's people who are deaf. There's people who don't have legs, don't have arms. All of that, right? Just by being able-bodied and healthy and not having like some debilitating disease or illness, like, you are blessed. Like, you've got, but most people don't think that way. So they just get stuck in this complain, whine, blame the system, blame capitalism, blame the white man, blame the patriarchy, It's like, seriously? Like, you're blessed, right? Yeah, go and get what's yours, right? It's not going to just be handed to you. We all got to work still, but and you know what? Maybe you might have to work harder than some people, but if you work hard, you'll still be.
It's yours.
Yeah, you'll be successful, at least to some degree.
Yeah, but I'm here I got some guests here in Germany, and we were talking about this the other day, that in general, society has become too easy, become too lax. And that's part of the problem. When people don't have a struggle to actually like focus on something to improve their lives or even just basic survival, then they start creating problems. Yeah. And it's like, I think that's more than ever. I think that's a proof that we actually, as a species, need struggle. Yes. Where it's like, life is so easy and so simple that you have to create stuff. Some of it's legitimate. I mean, we won't say that like all problems are like, fictitious or overplayed. There are some legitimate complaints out there, but
of course,
by far and large, most people who live in Western society are, like you said, they're blessed. They have an advantage, not only on a national but a global scale that puts them ahead of the vast majority of Earth's population. Who are making a few bucks a day, if not a week, and it's unbelievable.
And that's still more than it would have been in the past.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Even from exactly. Even when we look at it from a historical context, I mean, we've never had more freedom, have never had more opportunity, wealth, access to everything, foods from around the world, medical care, whatever else. This is stuff that just didn't exist, back then. That was another example we were talking about. We were walking through the woods in the middle of the night, and I was like, just imagine, 1,000 years ago, this was literally it. You would walk through the woods and not know if there's a village ahead or not, I mean, it's just, we were talking about this yesterday. I was like, it's just unbelievable how far we've come and in how unappreciative people are of it all, Yeah. I got another question for you, man.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if you're serious or not, but Kanye West, if he ran for president, would you vote for him or Trump?
I'd vote for Trump over Kanye.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There's a reason why. I was actually thinking Kanye might made a, just for entertainment.
Kanye is cool, man. I'm a big Kanye fan and have been for a long time, but I don't think he knows much about politics in terms of actually running things. But he's an interesting cultural thinker and leader.
Yeah.
That's different to being in the White House.
I think a lot of times Trump was voted on an entertainment factor. Now everybody really likes him. We actually see more support growing for him, which I think is a good thing. Germans actually don't like him. This is a conversation. I went to a lawyer the day we were supposed to, because we were supposed to be on like, what was it, Wednesday, I think it was, or something.
Yeah.
And I actually had like a legal appointment, and I went there, and the lawyer started going on about Trump, and I was just like, and he was just really going in on Trump. That guy is blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, I need your help. So I'm like,
yeah, it's funny. It's funny because I'm sure he thought you'd agree, right? I've had that. He really that happened to me, and the biggest. San Francisco is the first time I got in like a major argument with an Uber driver. Oh, because like I got in this Uber, and the driver was like, he was like, oh, so where are you from? And I was like, oh, I'm from the UK. And he goes, I'm sorry. And I was like, what you mean? And he goes, I'm sorry. I was like, why are you saying sorry? And he goes, the president. I'm sorry about our president. And then he like went on this huge anti-Trump rant and whatever. And I was like, oh, actually, I don't think he's that bad. And this guy almost crashed the car. he was because he was obviously, he saw, okay, young black guy from the UK. He obviously is going to hate Trump, right? And so he started like, saying all this like, anti, and I was like, oh, actually, I think he's doing a pretty good job kind of thing. And he was like, man, for the next half hour on the way to the airport, we were just kind of going back and forth on this. Wow. He had like major Trump derangement syndrome, like major, like super strong. Like he couldn't give him an inch. I was like, man, because I was saying like, okay, well, he's done that, and this is good, and that's good, and he was just deflecting, and he was saying, but he said this, but he said that, and I was like, like, yeah,
How
that
many
was
stars did you get for that ride?
Oh,
How many,
I don't even know. That's actually a great question. I'm not even sure. I didn't even check. I probably should
I
have.
always check. I always get on Uber afterwards. I'm like, oh, that guy,
Yeah,
that,
I should have actually checked that. Make sure he didn't ding me for not being anti-Trump.
yeah. Okay, one last question. And then if nobody has questions, because I usually stick to about an hour, we're up on an hour and
Yeah, man.
15 seconds. We talked about this earlier with with the protests and everything, and so we're gonna come back to this conversation. Statues. Now I have an opinion on statues. I want to get your take on it because I really respect
Okay.
your intellect on this. Statues I'm mixed about. Now I don't think we should be tearing statues down.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a place like, I'm gonna give the example of Belgium. Belgium has King Leopold. King Leopold, killed millions of Congolese people, and you actually have Congolese citizens living in Belgium, and they got a statue of this guy up. I'm kind of like, should it really be up, or you know what I mean? Is that a glorification, or is that just are we just signifying this guy was part of our history? You know what I mean? I'd be kind of upset, like if my family, they come from a history of slavery. And it's like, they had a statue of a guy who actually owned my great 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 grandfather. I'd be kind of like pissed. I look at that like, hey man,
yeah.
I feel some kind of way. What do you think?
I hear you.
I don't think you're tearing them down. This is my opinion. I'm not vandal destruction or whatever else. But
yeah, I'm with you on the anti-vandalism position. My view on this is pretty simple. I think look, if you're in a democratic country, then you can have a democratic process on it. If a lot of people feel a certain way about it, then I think there should be have a referendum, right? Have a vote. See if people want it taken down, then it can be taken down, safely and without a mob, etc. Yeah. And I think to me that's my basic position. It's just like, just do it democratically. I think I think there's no question that there's probably like a sliding scale of who you may or may not want to have a statue of. But a statue isn't always, I don't know, statues can be a lot of things, right? They can be a lot of things. They can be a sort of glorification. They can be a monument and a reminder, right? If you have a monument and a statue about I don't know, even Holocaust victims or, people in the Holocaust, right? That's not celebrating the Holocaust, right? It's like a reminder of something that happened, and you can have like a plaque with some context and a little bit of the story, etc. And it's like, look, this is part of a history, Do you want to have like a Hitler statue in Germany, right? I think, what's that?
I wanted to bring that up because that's why.
Okay.
Because Leopold is the comparative,
yes. Agreed. I'm aware of King Leopold. He cut off people's limbs and murdered a lot of people, etc. I'm aware of him. So again, but I think, and what? I think if you had the vote in Germany, I'm 100% certain if there were a Hitler statue, people would say no, we want it taken down.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's fine. So I think that would be the correct decision. But again, I do think that should go to. I do think it should go to the people, right? The people who live in the local area, and I think it should kind of come down to them, because otherwise you've just kind of got a really slippery slope, and we're seeing that, right? You now got people wanting to tear down Christopher Columbus and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and all the they want to blow up Mount Rushmore, and so you can see that real slippery slope thing happening there, right? It starts with the Confederates, it starts with Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, etc. But then people want to. It never stops. They want to tear down Abraham Lincoln, right? And it's like, well, there's got to be some kind of process here.
They've torn down statues. Doesn't make sense to tear down. I've seen statues of like animals torn down, statues of black leaders, and black inventors and whatnot torn down. It's just madness right now. It's just anarchy, really. Exactly. It's anarchy run by, like you call it, the mob. A very unintelligent one at that. So.
Yeah. I don't think you want to let the mob. Mob rule is generally a bad idea. So anything that comes down to mob rule, I'm like, nah. If you're supposed to have a democratic country, then do things in a democratic, civilized way.
Mm-mm. So let me ask you, with 2020 turning out to be the year that it is, man, what would you like to see going forward? I know you're doing all the talking, sir, but I really appreciate this, man. You got like that brain. That's why I follow you. Wait. Let me come back real quick. How did you end up following me on Twitter? I How did
How
that
did I
happen?
how did I end up following you? I'm not sure. Like I can't remember exactly. I know I followed you for a little while,
Yeah.
but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, no, I don't know. I just if someone maybe you followed me first, and if someone follows me and I come across their profile and it looks interesting, then I'll follow them back.
Okay,
So
cool.
it was probably one of those. Probably saw maybe we had some mutuals and stuff, and I
Yeah,
normally just flick through, look at okay, this person's talking sense and they have an interesting perspective. Let me add them to my timeline.
that feels. I started to sweat there, like, oh my god, was it good?
And I'm
Yeah.
I'm normally right. I follow good people.
Yeah. I've got a lot of follows off you, like guys I've like gone down, I see them talking, and I'm like, I follow a lot of
Nice.
guys,
Yeah.
from just being on your section. But the way forward in 2020, man, it's turned out to be a crazy year. Do you think it's going to get better or it's going to get worse?
Wow. In what aspect?
In any, dude. I would have never predicted protests in the Rona in January.
Yeah.
I never would have thought this is where we're going to be. The year started off really well for me. I started monetization on Twitter and whatnot, and I was making some money. And then it's just like, bow,
Yeah.
you know. Murphy showed up and his law came into effect.
Yeah. I think look, I think things are already a little bit better than they were a month or two ago.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think it's calmed down a little bit. I think people are gonna want to amp things up because, like I said, in the U.S. you've got an election year, so certainly in America there's gonna at least be some real or artificial ramping up and division and tension, just because that's election year. That's what the politicians need. That's what the media needs. But ultimately, I tend to be an optimist. And I think the coronavirus situation is, it's getting better, right? The numbers are coming down, like the death rate's certainly coming down, less deaths. It seems like we're past the peak. The gym opens here in the UK tomorrow after 3 months of being closed. Things are, shops are opening again. People are going back to work. I think it's getting better. I think we're past the peak of the virus itself and the response to the virus, and and then all of the BLM stuff and all of that. I think it'll get better. Like, barring some huge other catastrophic event, which I will not rule out. Dinosaurs could come back. We could get locust plague, death of the firstborn. I don't know, but I'm optimistic.
Okay, as an optimist, I guess that means you didn't do like me and go out and buy a bunch of weapons.
Nah, I'm not allowed to anyway. I'm in England.
Oh yeah, that's right, dang.
Yeah.
Bull Rush. Bull Rush is an old school follower of me on Twitter. He's a comedian. So
Okay.
are you more concerned about the murder hornets or Karen?
I think Karen is definitely more of a threat at this time.
Oh my gosh, that guy. Yeah.
I think we skipped the murder hornets. Those I haven't seen any of those, but I've seen a few Karens.
Yeah, murder hornets. I didn't. Was that really a thing?
Yeah, it was supposed to be a thing. Yeah, but
Oh my
it didn't.
god,
We missed that.
I gladly missed that too. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I never. I don't think I heard about the murder hornets. Karen. Actually, this is why I had to get a lawyer. I ran into a German Karen. And,
Oh, really?
I have to file a complaint against her, man. Got to take her to task.
Well, what happened?
So it's immigration. She was supposed to
Okay.
do my immigration documentation, and she just, I don't know what it is. She just don't like me. I don't know why. It might be an ethnicity thing. It might not be. It might be, you're an American and I don't like Trump, and so you're the, in Germany representation of Trump. I don't know what it could be, but
Okay.
she obviously, it's personal, and she didn't process my paperwork, and so my visa expired. And
Oh,
so I'm running
right.
around Germany, basically. I'm not illegal. I'm allowed to be in Germany 90 days, without like any sort of visa. But it does put me in a pretty bad position. I mean,
okay.
it's sorted now. It got taken care of. So but nevertheless, I was like, you know what, Karen, you want to fight? I'm gonna lawyer up. We're a litigious people, us Americans, and so I'm coming for your neck. So so I had to go see an immigration lawyer about that. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's sorted now. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Coronavirus.
They really are. Sir, I appreciate you coming on. It's been an hour. No one has any real serious questions.
Okay. Oh yeah.
So, and I know you're an ultra busy guy, so I'm going to let you get back to business. Anything? How can people contact you? Or what, please, if you contact Zuby from this interview, please don't harass him. Good God, man, I feel for him some days. I go on your Twitter. I want to log off for the day. I'm like, I don't know how do you stay so cheerful, man? I don't get it. I would be
Oh
mad.
man.
I'd be like sending people my address, like, come send the address. Like Khabib, I'd be like, send the address, send
Go see
location.
it. Yeah. I'm a chilled guy, man. I'm chilled. It's really hard to rile me up, and I just don't care a lot, right? Like I care about opinions that I should care about, and I dismiss the ones that I don't, right? There's not everyone's opinion holds the same weight.
I
So
gotta work on
yeah,
that.
yeah. Like you know what, Jim Bob 4578 on Twitter with 3 followers. You know what he has to say about me. I am not concerned. You know.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I need to work on that. Sometimes someone tweets something, I'm like, what the?
Also, man, I don't see 90% of it. Like I can't keep up with it. Like I don't, you know, while we've been talking, I must have got thousands of notifications. You know,
I mean,
I'll
what did
see
you say?
some of them. I can't see them all.
10 million impressions a month, you say?
100 million.
100 million a month. Yeah, you can't see
Billion a year.
My Twitter actually got better when I stopped. I said it so that like if they're not a follower of mine, I can't see their comments, and that really cleaned up everything a lot.
It does clean it up. It does clean it up. But yeah, there's only so much volume you can deal with, you know. And I try not to miss important stuff, but I'm like, look, if it's important, DM me. But I'm not going to see every mention.
Yeah. Bull Rush again. He identifies as okay, dude.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to contact you, because you do fitness, you do consultations, you do all sorts of stuff, how would they do it? How are they going to find you?
You can find me at ZUBY Music on all social media: Twitter, Instagram, Parlay, Facebook, YouTube at ZUBY Music, and teamzuby.com if you want to buy anything. My podcast, Real Talk with Zuby, and all my music are available on Spotify, iTunes, etc.
Okay, sir. I thank you for being on, and all right, we're out.